On the morning of Tuesday, November 11th, 2024, just after 10 a.m., the atmosphere at Birmingham Airport seemed ordinary. Flights landed, passengers collected luggage, and the flow of travelers continued without interruption. But among the routine movements of the arrivals hall, three separate stories of crime would soon collide in the public eye. Stories involving a mother who pulled her children into a criminal plot, a dealer whose carelessness revealed more than he intended, and a man who thought he could walk calmly through customs with a fortune in drugs. This is on the surface. Farzana Kauza, a 54-year-old woman from Bradford, lived the life of a typical mother and grandmother. To her community, she seemed like many others, raising her family, attending to household responsibilities, and presenting the image of an ordinary parent. But behind that outwardly quiet existence, she was carefully building and directing an international drug trafficking operation valued at millions. Investigators would later describe her as the linchpin of a sophisticated network, one that moved vast quantities of cocaine from Mexico to the United Kingdom. Kauza was far from acting alone. Evidence presented in court revealed that she was working with contacts overseas, including a figure referred to as Uncle in Pakistan, who played a role in arranging shipments and providing connections. This shadowy partnership helped her establish a system that on the surface looked like carefully timed family trips abroad, but in reality, it was the foundation of a large-scale criminal enterprise. Her leadership was both calculated and deeply personal. Unlike many organized crime figures who distanced themselves from direct family involvement, Kauza deliberately recruited her own children into the conspiracy. Some were barely out of their teenage years. Hamza Shafak, for example, was only 17 when the offenses took place. Still legally a minor when the smuggling was underway, his life trajectory was altered irreversibly by the decision to obey his mother's demands. His siblings, ranging from their late teens to early 30s, were all given roles to play. Her eldest son, Junaid Shafak, 33, took on a central role, helping coordinate travel and oversee operations. His position in the family made him a natural extension of his mother's authority. Alongside him was Mohammed Amir Shafak, 28, who acted as a courier, entrusted with handling luggage runs and taking part in the smuggling activity. Umayya Mohammed, 22, became part of the operation at an age when most young adults are just beginning careers or settling into adult life. His role as a courier exposed him to the full dangers of the conspiracy. Kauza's decision to draw in her daughter-in-law, Sarah Hussein, 27, widened the circle of devastation. Rather than being shielded from the criminal side of the family, Hussein was instead expected to take part in the broader plot. Safa Noor, just 19 at the time, was another one of the youngest members of the conspiracy. Drawn directly into her mother's plan, she acted as a courier within the network. Her role showed how even the youngest in the family were given responsibilities in carrying out the true sophistication of the conspiracy lay in the way the gang engineered their airport routine to appear ordinary. On the surface, their movements mimicked those of casual travelers making short breaks to nearby European destinations. But beneath that appearance, the family's travel plans were carefully timed to intercept one specific stream of luggage. Flights arriving directly from Cancun, Mexico, carrying suitcases already packed with high-purity cocaine. The process began with fake short trips. Members of the group would book tickets to Dublin or Amsterdam, two popular short-haul destinations. They would travel lightly, often with no checked luggage at all. These journeys gave the impression of brief, legitimate getaways. Crucially, their return flights were deliberately timed to land at Birmingham Airport, just as a long-haul flight from Cancun was arriving. Inside the baggage hall, this timing became the cornerstone of the plan. As passengers from both flights mixed at the carousel area, Kauza's couriers would move toward the belt serving the Mexico flight. Preloaded suitcases, packed with kilos of cocaine, had been checked in at Cancun by a corrupt insider. The conspirators would simply lift the unaccompanied bags off the carousel and roll them out of the arrivals hall, as though they were retrieving their own belongings from their short-haul flight. The brilliance of the method lay in its simplicity. To an untrained eye, nothing appeared suspicious. Some reports suggest that international drug trafficking networks had used the same tactic before. It became a repeatable system, tested across at least 5 smuggling runs between August and November 2024, employing Farzana Kausar's family with similar precision. There was no need for concealed compartments or false-bottomed cases. Instead, the risk was shifted entirely to the moment of interception. Avoiding customs scrutiny was central to the strategy. By behaving like any other returning passenger, dressed casually and avoiding nervous gestures, the couriers counted on slipping through unnoticed. The family's ability to maintain composure was key, since the entire plan rested on appearing normal. On the day of November 11th,
investigators,
officers
from
the
the
National
collection
Crime
was the
Agency,
final piece of proof
NCA,
needed
and
to
airport
confirm
security
conspiracy
teams
in action,
had been quietly
CCTV
monitoring
footage
a group
also
of
captured the
individuals
group whose
wheeling the heavy
movements matched the
suitcases
pattern
through the terminal
uncovered
doors
and out onto
over
the
several
forecourt,
weeks of
blending
investigation.
with other passengers heading toward
They had
pickup vehicles.
identified the suspect's travel
Also
pattern,
captured
as they
and
pushed
this
trolleys
time,
and dragged
the
bags
group
across
every
the pavement.
step
Their
was
plan
under
appeared
close
to be working
surveillance
until officers closed
represented not just
in
the
the airport car
disruption
park,
of a single
just as the
smuggling
group
run,
began loading the
but
luggage into waiting
dismantling
cars.
of an entire
National Crime Agency
family-led
teams
trafficking
moved in.
pipeline.
Within moments,
6
photographs
suspects
released
were
later
surrounded
by
and
the
arrested
CPS
of cocaine,
showed seized
compressed
packages
into
stacked
blocks
together
and tightly wrapped
a
for
stark
distribution.
visual of what the family had
The value of
risked
the haul was
everything to
staggering.
transport.
Experts calculated its
Now,
wholesale
before we
worth
move on
at
to
around
the sentences
and all
handed down in
suitcases were
court for the
seized
Kauser
before they could
family,
leave the airport
let's
grounds.
pause to uncover another
Inside,
shocking
investigators
case.
found an astonishing 180 kilograms, £5 million with a potential street value of £14.4 million, once broken down into smaller deals. In February 2016, security staff at Birmingham Airport were carrying out what seemed like a routine inspection at the departure gates. Among the passengers preparing to board a flight to Pakistan was Majid Hussain, a man who presented himself like any other traveler. But in his hand luggage, officers found something that changed the course of his life: a wrap of heroin. The discovery was so surprising because of its simplicity. Investigators later noted that Hussain had not hidden the drug inside a false compartment, nor had he tried to disguise it in elaborate packaging. Instead, the heroin was placed inside his carry-on bag. That small oversight instantly exposed him to further scrutiny. Airport staff raised the alarm, and Hussain was detained on the spot. What began as a minor-looking find quickly spiraled into something much larger. His behavior and the presence of heroin in his bag triggered suspicions that he was not a casual user, but someone with ties to a broader criminal network. Within hours, the airport incident had escalated into a full-scale investigation. The idea that such a seasoned dealer could be undone by something so basic fascinated investigators. They considered whether Hussein's confidence had turned into carelessness, assuming that he would breeze through checks, or whether he had genuinely been sloppy in preparing for the journey. Either way, the result was the same. The wrap of heroin in his carry-on served as the thread that began to unravel the rest of his hidden world. This airport blunder was not just about a misplaced packet of drugs. It was the key that unlocked a much larger story, leading authorities directly to Hussein's home and exposing a stockpile of drugs, weapons and cash far beyond what anyone could have expected from a single passenger at a security check. Once Hussain was detained at Birmingham Airport, officers quickly secured warrants to search his home address on Nansen Road, Saltley, containing 1 kilo of heroin and 4 kilos of cocaine, estimated to have a street value of around £250,000. This confirmed suspicions that the airport wrap was just a fraction of his supply and that Hussain had been involved in regular distribution, but drugs were only part of the picture. Inside the same property, police located an arsenal of weapons that underscored just how dangerous Hussain was. Among the finds was a semi-automatic handgun, fully capable of lethal use, alongside 27 rounds of live ammunition. Officers also uncovered a stun gun cleverly disguised as a mobile phone, a piece of equipment designed to incapacitate without drawing immediate attention. An air pistol was also seized, adding to the collection of weapons that highlighted Hussain's readiness to enforce or protect his criminal activities through violence if necessary. Perhaps most telling of all was the discovery of £300,000 in cash stashed away in the house. Bundled notes pointed to extensive illegal earnings and a thriving drug enterprise
that had been operating well before his arrest at the airport. For investigators, the money symbolized the profits Hussein had been reaping, while his community bore the consequences of addiction and violence. The raid left no doubt. Majid Hussein was not an unlucky passenger caught with a misplaced rap, but a well-armed and well-financed dealer. The combination of drugs, firearms, and vast cash reserves painted a picture of a man at the center of a dangerous and toxic network. When the case against Majid Hussein came before Birmingham Crown Court in August 2016, the scale of his criminality was laid out in full. Prosecutors guided the jury through all the evidence investigators had collected, evidence we have already covered earlier, which convinced the court that Hussein was not simply a careless passenger, but a dangerous and high-level dealer. Hussein chose to plead guilty on the opening day of his trial. The charges included possession of a prohibited firearm, possession of a disguised firearm, possession of ammunition, possession of Class A drugs with intent to supply, and possession of criminal property. By admitting the offences, he avoided a contested trial, but the evidence was already overwhelming. During sentencing, Judge Patrick Thomas QC delivered a sharp assessment. He described the mixture of guns and drugs as a toxic combination, highlighting how dangerous such a pairing was for the wider public. The court imposed a sentence of 12 years in prison. Even after Majid Hussein's conviction, the case did not end at the courtroom doors. Of thousands of pounds. He was formally ordered to repay £295,000 within 3 months. The ruling was stark: either surrender the money or face an additional 3 years in prison on top of his 12-year sentence. Investigators also noted that a further £33,000 of criminal benefit would remain outstanding, to be recovered once additional assets were identified. While Majid Hussein's empire collapsed through carelessness, another smuggler would soon attempt a far bolder move. In November 2021, the routine rhythm of Birmingham Airport was once again disrupted when officers stopped a passenger whose calm composure masked a fortune in narcotics. The man was Mohammed Uzayr Rashid, a 35-year-old from Oldham in Greater Manchester, who had just arrived on a flight from Sialkot in Pakistan via Dubai. On the surface, he looked like an ordinary traveler returning from a trip abroad, yet hidden in his luggage was a consignment that investigators would later describe as both staggering in size and alarming in purity. Border Force officers directed Rashid to a secondary search area. The inspection revealed that his checked-in baggage contained nearly 18 kilograms of heroin, packed in multiple tightly wrapped packages. Forensic analysis confirmed that the drugs were of exceptionally high purity, between 66% and 71%. In street terms, this single haul carried an estimated value of more than £900,000. What stood out most in this initial encounter was Rashid's demeanor. CCTV footage, released by the National Crime Agency, later showed him moving through the terminal calmly, without hesitation, pushing his bags as though nothing was amiss. From the outset, Rashid attempted to distance himself from the evidence. Confronted with the heroin found in his luggage, his first defense was denial. A particular message stood out. As Rashid approached airport security, nervous about whether he would be stopped, Brother reassured him with the words, "Remain tension-free. God will be generous." The phrasing was meant to calm him, to encourage him to walk naturally through the checks. But in hindsight, it served as chilling evidence of how Rashid had been managed in real time, almost like a puppet directed from afar. For the National Crime Agency, the phone evidence was crucial. It revealed not only Rashid's complicity, but also the wider structure of a professional supply chain. This was not the act of a lone man smuggling drugs for personal gain. It was part of a carefully organized network that recruited couriers, financed flights, and coordinated movements across international borders. Rashid was just one link in that chain, but his arrest exposed vulnerabilities that the NCA would continue to exploit. By May 2022, Rashid appeared at Birmingham Crown Court to face judgment. He entered a guilty plea to importation of Class A drugs, an acknowledgement that he had knowingly attempted to bring the heroin into the UK. The plea spared him a trial, but the sentence reflected the seriousness of the crime: 9 years in prison. The case of Mohammed Uzair Rashid underscored a recurring theme already evident in other Birmingham airport busts. His story joined the long list of examples used by the NCA to remind others that the lure of fast cash is always outweighed by the certainty of eventual capture and punishment. Now let's return to the first case, where we left the Bradford family caught at Birmingham Airport, and uncover what happened when they finally faced sentencing in court. When the Cowser family and their associate finally stood before Birmingham Crown Court in late 2024, the scale of their crimes was matched only by the severity of the sentences imposed. At the centre was Farzana Cowser, identified as the ringleader and was sentenced to 13 years and 4 months in prison. Her children each received significant custodial terms. Junaid Shafak, 33, was sentenced to 10 years and 9 months, while Mohammed Amir Shafak, 28, received 8 years and 9 months. Umair Mohammed, 22, was handed 8 years and 1 month, and the youngest, Hamza Shafak, who was just 17 at the time of the smuggling runs, was dealt with separately due to his age. By the time of the trial, he had turned 18, and according to the Crown Prosecution Service, his sentencing was scheduled for October 2025.
Great yaar, great. Video jeng le aanda na shukar hai. Copyright aa jana. मैं तो अच्छी बड़ी क्लियर आ रही ऐप का कार वाला चलता है यार देख मैं रिजल्ट चेक कर उधर तो चल रही है ना तो इसी साइड में बहुत ज़्यादा मुँह सीधा ही रखना अपना ठीक है ना फिर मुँह पे चला इधर मारा इधर सीधा रखना बस नहीं सीधी तरह चला जाए चलाना एक ही वीडियो बना 2 मिनट की बात हैंडल क्यों हिला गया